when Jesus had that Last Supper with his disciples on the Thursday night before his crucifixion, it wasn't something he just made up. It was something which was this long tradition for the Jewish people. And it grew out of their escape out of Egypt. And so they were told to get ready, go. Moses took them out. And then when they became established, they set up what became known as the Passover meal. And that's what Jesus was celebrating with his disciples. And there was a whole lot of symbolism in that meal. And we're going to talk a little bit about symbolism today and a couple of new... Thank you. Thank you. A couple of things that you might have come across before or might be new to you. But in that meal there would have been a plate in the middle that had a bunch of symbolic food, like there was a boiled egg cut in half, which is a symbol of seeds of new life, and there was biscuits, flatbread, and there was paste made of apple and walnuts ground up. And through the meal, they would break off little bits of biscuit, cover it with the paste, put another one on top, more paste, and they build up. It's like an image of making the bricks that the slaves in Egypt did before Moses took them out of Egypt. And there was bitter herbs, which was, these days they probably use something like parsley, but it was bitter that they'd take because it was a bitter time of their history. There were sweet things because it was the sweetness of being saved out of that life of slavery. And there was also a number of glasses of wine on the table in front of them. And the wine, each glass of wine was named after some person who had figured in their history. And so the meal went along standard lines. And there'd be questions asked. The youngest would normally ask the oldest, what does it mean this? So normally you'd have little kids saying, Granddad, what does it mean this? And he would tell the history. And like a birthday party. And it would, every year, this recollection. And then at the end, Jesus did something very different. In amongst all of this symbolism, he gave two different symbols. He broke off the bread and passed around and said, take a piece of this. And then you remember what he said. He said, this is my body broken for you. They had no idea what that meant. And we would have trouble explaining it now. Because when you're starting to deal with symbolism, all we can see is the thing on the outside, but we don't know how deep it goes or what the mystery is underneath. We just know that there's this there's this mystery. And then he took a glass of wine. It was one that was not normally drunk. It was always left there. It was the wine that was named after the prophet Elijah. And Elijah was taken up into heaven, never died. And the story was that when Elijah returns, the Messiah will come. It will herald the return of the Messiah. And so the cup of wine there was left for the return of Elijah, because it hasn't happened this year, maybe next year. And he took that cup and he passed it around. He said, drink from this, all of you. And you remember what he said? He said, this is my blood of the new covenant, which is shed for you and for many for the forgiveness of sins. Once again, they had no idea what that meant. They knew he wasn't mad, but they knew something different was happening. And when we celebrate communion, we are picking up these renewed symbols that Jesus gave about the body and the blood of himself. And I want to talk for a minute about bread and wine. Who's ever made their own bread? Not as many as I would have thought. Boy, 20 years ago, everybody had a bread maker.
It was all the rage. It was a real thing.
Well, through Corona time, it was sourdough. But 20 or 30 years ago, everybody was buying these bread-making machines, and they were mad about it. And in the end, I thought, no, it's just easier to get bread from Woolies. What are the three ingredients for bread? Flour, not wheat. Flour, there's no eggs in bread. You put flour and eggs, you'll get casta. We've got flour and water and yeast. Thank you. Sometimes you put a bit of sugar in, sometimes you'll put some oil in, sometimes you'll put some salt in. Sometimes you'll put raisins or something, but the basic ingredients, flour and water and Yeast. Who's ever seen yeast? Who hasn't seen yeast? If it looks like dead breadcrumbs, it is just grey, and you look at it and it's like little lumps of dusty stuff, and it's powder, and you put in a few teaspoons of this, but something happens when the yeast hits the water. And what you don't know about flour is that it's full of sugars called carbohydrates. Carbohydrates, just, we go carb loading. If you're an athlete, you know about carb loading before you have a big day on the bike or running. And the sugar in it, the yeast says, yummy, I love sugar. And you know what it does? The yeast eats the sugar, and what does it produce? Two things. Speak a bit louder. It doesn't produce sweet, it produces carbon dioxide and bubbles, which is why you get bubbles through bread. Boy, I've got to teach you people everything. Weren't you paying attention? Weren't you paying attention in year 9 in cooking class? And it also produces alcohol.
Oh, now we're listening, right?
So what happens is the yeast is going on the sugar in the bread and it's puffing it up. It's like this secret life inside. And it turns flour and water into bread. Now, when I was at school, we used to make, what do you get when you get flour and water? Glue. You're old enough to know how to make glue out of flour and water. He's not as old as he looks then. When I was in... I thought he'd be in school long enough to know that you made flat glue out.
We ate the clag.
Oh, right, yeah. We used to make our own clag. That's how much older I am. We get flour and water to make glue. If you get flour and water, you make glue, but if you got yeast, you get bread. And who'd rather eat bread? Everyone. Because it's got this secret life in it, and it puffs it up and it makes it beautiful. Real estate agents say, if you're selling the house, what do you do before the customers come and check it out? You bake some bread. And you put coffee on. But you bake some bread. People walk in. Many years ago, I was a supervisor in a bakery supervising deliveries. And so I had a work car, which was a delivery wagon. I was also a scout leader. And so after scouts, with the other leaders, we'd be dropping kids home. And I had the bread wagon. Guess which one everybody wanted to go in? Because they'd get in there. Oh, I love the smell in here because it just felt like fresh bread. We know it, you see. There's this secret life in bread. Now, how do you make wine? 2 ingredients. Grapes.
Feet.
What?
Oh, feet. Feet. You got grapes and yeast. Boy, oh boy. You people need to go to the Hunter Valley. Pecolbin is not so far away. You get grapes and you crush them up and you get the juice and you put yeast in. Now, what does the yeast do? Come on. It puffs it up. It puffs it up. It says, sugar. I love sugar. And it converts the sugar into what 2 things? Carbon dioxide and alcohol. And that's what wine is. Because wine is grape juice that's had this secret life, but it looks dead. You put yeast into wine and it looks dead. It just looks... I should have bought some in. I would have thought you'd know what it is. It just looks like sand. But it's not dead. It's got this secret life in it. When we take communion, let's pretend that this is alcoholic wine and proper made bread, which it is. There's a secret life in it. It's only grape juice, fruit juice, by the way. It's not alcoholic. But there's a secret life in it. And now what happens when we use the bread and the wine as some symbol of Christ's presence with us? We have this other symbol of the secret life of Christ within us. We don't just have bread and wine because they've done it forever. We have it because it's a symbol of the secret life of Christ within us. Amen. I don't think I need to say any more. We'll just eat together and we'll drink together as you're ready.